started now. If you have any questions, just type it in the chat down there at the bottom, and I will definitely get to it once I kind of get through the clinical overview. And of course, as well, if you can't hear me for some reason, like if this is being broadcast through Adobe Connect, just shoot me a message in the chat and we'll work it out. Anyway, I just wanted to thank everyone for joining me today for CTAC's patient input consultation webinar for Sofosbuvir, Velpatasvir, Voxilaprevir, which is a new medication to treat hepatitis C. So my name is Amanda Fletcher, and I'm one of the policy researchers here at CTAC. And also right here on the main page, you'll see that we have a link to our patient input survey. So I've scattered this throughout the presentation. I'll talk more kind of about the actual survey towards the end of the presentation, but I'd also like to highlight at the very beginning that we've put this link throughout, as it's fundamental that the voices of people living with hepatitis C are included in the Common Drug Review patient input submission process. So please don't forget to fill out our questionnaire, as well as provide the link to others that may be interested in getting involved in the process. So just a little bit about CTAC here at the beginning, in case some of you are not familiar with what we do. So we are the Canadian Treatment Action Council. So we are Canada's national civil society organization that addresses access to treatment, care, and support for people living with HIV and viral hepatitis co-infection. So we meaningfully engage with a broad number of stakeholders, ranging from people living with HIV and hepatitis C, frontline service providers, healthcare professionals, and policymakers. We work in collaboration to identify, develop, and implement policy and program solutions. So on the agenda for today, I'll begin with a brief video about Canada's drug regulatory process and speak a bit about the Common Drug Review and provide an overview of market access to treatments in Canada. This will be followed by an introduction to and some key characteristics of Sofosbuvir, Velpatasvir, Voxilaprevir, or Sofvelvox. And then I will go into some of the key findings from the Sofvelvox clinical trials. And after that, I'll explain a bit more about how you can have your voice heard as a person living with HCV or a caregiver. And then everyone will also have the opportunity to engage in discussion and ask any questions that may arise. So we usually like to begin our webinars just by providing an overview of market access and the Common Drug Review. So more recently, CTAC has created a handy 5-minute video that captures how drugs get to market. So I'm going to play that for you now. Okay, so we're having some technical difficulties trying to get the video to play through here, but it is available right on our website. And as I was saying, it's really kind of a great overview of market access and the Common Drug Review. But just to kind of give you a bit of Common Drug Review background, I'll kind of go over some key points. And then definitely, like, if you have some time at some point, check out the video we have on our website, because it really is kind of a nice overview and a distillation of what the process looks like. So just to kind of summarize the drug approval process, the first step is regulatory approval at Health Canada. And here's where Health Canada reviews new drug submission data to determine a drug's safety and efficacy. So at this stage, if results are deemed favorable and the drug treats the condition that is intended to treat, a drug is issued a notice of compliance, which gives manufacturers approval for the sale of the drug in Canada. So in the second step of the drug approval process, all provinces, with the exception of Quebec, who uses its own assessment system, participate in the Common Drug Review. So the Canadian Drug Expert Committee, or CDEC, reviews the clinical cost-effectiveness evidence for a drug. So the Common Drug Review also looks at patient evidence. They collect patient input and want to know what people who are living with the condition and caregivers think of the drug under consideration. Because many people access medications through publicly available drug programs, this step is particularly important in determining the accessibility of medications in Canada. So the third step is to provide all jurisdictions with formulary listing recommendations. So either to list with criteria and conditions, or do not list at all. So it's also important to mention that while the CDR provides a recommendation on whether or not the drug should be listed, it is jurisdictions themselves who determine whether they will list the drug on their formularies and under what criteria based on their own priorities, economic considerations, etc. So the purpose of this webinar is to ensure that the voices of people living with hepatitis C are present in this process. So by participating in this webinar and completing the survey, you are helping to inform the patient input submission that CTAC will provide to the Canadian Drug Expert Committee. Okay, so now a bit more about the drug itself. So Sofosbuvir, Velpatasvir, Voxilaprevir. We're going to talk a bit about how and why this drug was developed. So Sofosbuvir is a combination direct-acting antiviral medication for hepatitis C. So it consists of three component medications, which are Sofosbuvir, Velpatasvir, and Voxilaprevir. And they inhibit the production of proteins that hepatitis C uses to produce new cells. So Sofosbuvir is a nucleotide polymerase inhibitor. Velpatasvir is an NS5A inhibitor, and Voxilaprevir is an NS3/4A protease inhibitor. So it's a once-daily fixed-dose combination ribavirin-free treatment for DAA-experienced patients, including those who have had NS5A failures and NS5A non-failures. So just for the rest of this presentation, since this drug is a bit of a mouthful, I'm just going to refer to it under this abbreviation, which is Sofosbuvir. So over the past several years, we have seen a revolution in hepatitis C treatment. So new direct-acting antiviral regimens, such as Sofosbuvir, have dramatically higher cure rates than the old standard treatment of ribavirin and PEG interferon. Clinical trials for PEG interferon and ribavirin had cure rates between 45 to 80%. However, newer DAAs have shown cure rates of 95% or greater. Many of these treatments were specifically designed to treat hepatitis C genotype 1, which is the most common genotype in North America. New DAA treatments also reduce treatment time from 24 or 48 weeks needed to as little as 12 weeks. These newer drugs also have fewer and less severe side effects than earlier treatments, making them easier to tolerate so that a course of treatment can be completed. Early DAAs required the use of PEG interferon and ribavirin, which meant that people using these treatments were still impacted by the side effects of the latter. We've seen increasing numbers of DAAs being released that don't require PEG interferon or ribavirin unless someone has a particularly difficult to treat infection. So with all of these advances, you might be wondering why new hepatitis C medications like Sofosbuvir continue to be developed. There are some remaining hurdles before we have truly effective treatments for all patients. One area of need is to have truly pan-genotypic treatment options. Much of the focus of DAA development was on producing an effective treatment for genotype 1. Many of these newer treatments are less effective for other genotypes, particularly genotype 3. While treatment regimens have been reduced substantially already, even shorter treatment regimens are desired to reduce the burden on patients and to decrease the possibility of people stopping treatment prematurely. Along those lines, while DAA treatments often do not need ribavirin, people with difficult-to-treat infections may still need to use this medication and have to deal with its side effects. Eliminating the need for ribavirin completely would lead to better patient experiences. For the small percentage of people who experience treatment failure with DAAs, there is a risk of developing resistance to medications, making future treatment more difficult. For any medication, drug-drug interactions limit the number of people who can successfully use them. People living with hepatitis C are also disproportionately impacted by other health conditions, including HIV. Similarly, people dealing with multiple health conditions may have challenges completing treatment. For people living with hepatitis C, the impact of the virus on their organ health may limit the ability of their body to handle treatment. Improving all of these factors would allow for treatment that is potentially effective for the greatest number of people and is not burdensome. So to talk about Sofosbuvir more specifically and some of the features of this drug, and what it can potentially offer to people living with hepatitis C. Like many newer treatments, it's a once-daily medication. It's been designed as a pan-genotypic treatment. We'll look more closely at some of the clinical trial data on how effective it is for the various genotypes as well in this presentation. Sofosbuvir is taken completely without ribavirin for all patients. We'll look at some of the clinical trial data for harder to treat populations that show its efficacy without ribavirin. The molecules in the drug are also designed to be highly effective against drug-resistant strains of HCV and to be less likely to cause drug resistance in the event of a treatment failure. Okay, so now let's take a look at some of the clinical trial data in the Sofosbuvir phase 3 program. And this was for DAA experienced and NS5A experienced patients. So this is their Polaris 1 trial. I'm going to show you new data for different groups of people living with hepatitis C, so you can better understand how it works for people with various health status. The Polaris program enrolls a diverse population of patients, including many with factors historically associated with treatment failure. So first, we'll be looking at people living with hepatitis C who have used both direct-acting antiretrovirals and NS5A inhibitors who either have developed or haven't developed cirrhosis across all genotypes. So this includes genotypes 1 to 6. So results for this group were very positive, with very high efficacy for those on a 12-week regimen. So overall, 96% of those in the trial achieved a suppressed virological response, or SVR, over the course of a 12-week regimen. So 99% of those with no cirrhosis achieved an SVR, while 93% of those with cirrhosis achieved an SVR. So now let's look at how well the treatment worked for people living with hepatitis C who have used direct-acting antiretrovirals but have not used the NS5A inhibitors, who either have developed or haven't developed cirrhosis, and this is across genotypes 1 to 4. So, and this is within the Polaris 4 trial, and within this trial, genotypes 5 to 6 were excluded. So results for this group was also very positive, with very high efficacy for those on a 12-week regimen. So overall, 97% of those in the trial had a suppressed virological response, or an SVR, over the course of 12 weeks. So 98% of those with no cirrhosis achieved an SVR, while 96% of those with cirrhosis achieved an SVR. So the Sofosbuvir phase 3 program for DAA naive patients, so this was their Polaris 2 and Polaris 3 studies, looked at people living with hepatitis C who have not been exposed to DAAs previously. So these studies looked at a broad group of people across all genotypes, and people both with and without cirrhosis received an 8-week course of treatment, while those within the other studies received a 12-week course of treatment. So this next slide shows the results of the integrated safety analysis across all of the Polaris trials. So Polaris trials 1 to 4. So the most common drug-related adverse events across were headache, fatigue, nausea, and diarrhea. So no participants discontinued treatment due to DAEs during the 8-week course of treatment for the DAA naive patients. And on the flip side, 4 participants, so that's only 0.005% of the study population, discontinued treatment due to adverse events during the 12-week course of treatment with DAA experience. Okay, sorry, I'm just trying to, there's a little thing in the chat about the slides not switching over, so just give me a second, I'm going to see if that works. Okay, so hopefully the slides are moving for you now. They're moving on mine. If they're not, I apologize. We can definitely look about sending these slides out as well. It's moving now? Okay, thanks. Thanks, Alan. Okay, great. I'm sorry about that, everybody. So just to kind of summarize everything I was just talking about. So for Sofosbuvir, the clinical trials have shown high efficacy for a variety of different people living with HCV. So the drug is truly pangenotypic, showing a high efficacy in all 6 genotypes. So Sofosbuvir is also safe and effective for people with more complicated health conditions like previous treatment experience and drug resistance and/or cirrhosis of the liver. So baseline resistance-associated substitutions, or RASs, did not impact treatment outcomes with suppressed virological rates of between 94 to 100%. So side effects for most patients were fairly mild, and the drug was well tolerated by all the patient groups studied. So that was a really brief kind of overview of the new drug combination Sofosbuvir. So this is the end of the clinical trial findings, and now it's really the most important part of this is your turn to provide your input on this medication. So CTAC has developed a user-friendly web-based survey for participants to fill out based on some of the questions that are included in the common drug review form. So what is being asked of you are to answer questions based on the impact of living with hepatitis C or providing care and services for a person living with HCV, the impact of current hepatitis C medications from what you've observed or experienced, what adverse events are tolerable and which are not, what is the impact of HCV treatment on caregivers and service providers, your experiences with treatment in general, and if you've participated in a clinical trial or have taken Sofosbuvir, what are your experiences with this medication? We're particularly interested to hear your thoughts on how it compares to the other treatments that are available to treat hepatitis C, and what some of the benefits or drawbacks of Sofosbuvir are. So this brings us to the end of the clinical overview. I'd also like to thank each and every one of you for your participation and bearing with me while we're having some technical difficulties on my end. As I said at the beginning of the presentation, it's fundamental that the voices of people living with hepatitis C are included in the common drug review patient input submission. So please don't forget to fill out our questionnaire, as well as feeling free to provide the link to others that may be interested in getting involved in the process. So if there are any questions, please let me know. Let's wait a second. If anybody has any questions, feel free to type it in the chat below. Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining me. please fill out the survey. And if anybody has any questions or comments, please feel free to email me at amanda@ctac.ca. Thanks, everybody. And yes, we also have a link to the common drug review video that was supposed to play a few slides back, presented in the chat there. So please feel free to click it and view it. It's a really